Hey guys, welcome back to Pegasus Prison. I'm Peggy, and this is my channel. Yep, that's the name of the channel. That's me too. You might be asking yourself, at this point, should have switched over to the game. And I realize some people are you know, unable to read. Um, but in case you didn't know, we're not doing a game. This is it's ASMR, ASMR. But yeah, you might be asking a follow up. What is ASMR? Or maybe why? And I have a good answer that answers both of those questions. It's why not? That doesn't answer the first question. It's ASMR. It stands for ASMR. I don't know. I don't really want to be like one of those channels that's just like, I have my one marketable thing. It's the only thing I'll ever do for the rest of my life. No, I know it's like bad for channels to not have like a solid upload schedule or have like a, you know, theme for the videos, but I don't really care. The editing on this isn't top notch, but it never really is top notch. It's not supposed to be top notch. I literally I have the production quality of a bowl of soup. Well, okay, that's selling myself short. It's a pot of soup. It's a pretty big pot. Uh, I think you've seen those like big pots. You know what I'm talking about. But I edit all of my videos in OBS. Like I'll download the media of just like the raw video, and I'll put it in OBS, and then I'll just pause the recording for the parts I want to edit out. And that's it. That's how I've been doing it. And that's why it sucks all so much. All the time. And that's too bad. And you don't have to listen to this. I think I'm just gonna put like a timestamp in the video for like when we're gonna actually like start the thing that we're doing. But yeah, so actually it's a good segue. That's not, but it's a good segue to do that right now. We're going to be saying in this voice, of course, the Five Nights at Freddy's Ultimate Custom Night, Mr. Hippo Death Speech. And we're going to be doing the first one, which is about 3 minutes long, and this is a 2 minute recording so far. And if we have some more time, we're going to be doing some more. But yeah, that's it. So, I guess. Also, if I'm looking like weirdly off to the side, I'm reading this from my phone. And it's like right next to the camera. It's don't ask, don't ask. My friend, you have met a terrible, terrible demise. But I don't feel too bad about it. After all, if it weren't from me, it would have just been from someone else. I guess what I'm trying to say is life life goes on. I mean, life goes on for everyone else, not for you. You're dead. But that's neither here nor there. It reminds me of one summer day in the park. I was having just a delightful picnic with my good friend Orville. And I said to him, I said, Orville, I have a story. And he said to me, he looked me square in the eyes and he said to me, what's the significance of the story? And I said to him, I said, Orville, not every story has to have significance. Sometimes a story is just a story. Try to read in everything and find meaning in everything anyone says. You'll just drive yourself crazy. Had a friend do it once, wasn't pretty, talked about it for years, and not only that, you'll likely end up believing something you shouldn't believe, thinking something you shouldn't think, or assuming something you shouldn't assume. Sometimes I said to him, I said, sometimes a story is just a story. So, quiet for 1 second in your life and just eat a sandwich. Of course, it was only then I realized I had made sandwiches, but poor Orville was having such difficulty eating it. Elephants have those clumsy hands, you know. Actually, I suppose that's the problem. They don't have hands at all, do they? They're all feet. I couldn't imagine somebody asking me to eat a sandwich with my feet. Now, if I recall correctly, there was a bakery nearby. Yeah, I recall correctly. I said to him, I said, Orville, I'm gonna get you some rye bread. Now, I'm personally unsure if elephants appreciate rye bread, but I assure you, Orville does. Dramatic. Now, this was Tuesday, which was good because rye bread was always fresh on Tuesday. They made sourdough bread on Monday and threw it out Wednesday. Or rather, they sold it at a discount for people wanting to feed the ducks. And then, probably at the end of the day, finally they threw it all out. I don't recall. I do remember, however, a man who would bring his son to the bakery every Wednesday, and they'd go feed the ducks. Of course, he would buy all the sourdough bread, and of course, you're not supposed to feed the ducks sourdough bread at all. It swells up in their stomachs, and they all die. At least that's what I've heard. I never saw any ducks die myself, but I did notice a substantial decrease in the duck population over the course of a few years. I just never thought to stop the man and tell him he was killing the ducks by feeding them sourdough bread. And if you want my opinion on the matter, and I told Orville this too, if you want to feed ducks, or animals for any kind of that matter, it's best to buy seed. I mean, when you think about it, breads of any sort don't occur in nature. They don't grow on trees or spring up from the bushes. I don't think the animals really know what to do with bread. What was I saying? Oh, yes. So I brought Orville some fresh rye bread. What a fine day that was. Looks off into the distance dramatically. That was interesting. Oh my god. This has been. Jeez. Um. That was interesting. I I liked that a lot. That was pretty weird. But it's only 8 minutes. I think I want to get to 10 minutes. Yeah, so I'm gonna do one or two more. I really hope y'all like that. And I can hear myself with one, but I really hope I sound good because I might sound terrible. I don't know. Anyway, yeah. Now it seems that you have met your end. What a pity. You know, I don't feel too bad about it though. After all, if it weren't for me, it would have just been one of the others. I guess honestly, I'm glad to be out of those air ducts. It's not easy for a hippopotamus to fit up there, and not easy to get down either. Not as young as I used to be, as you can see. I used to do all sorts of things. You're young, you're vibrant, you have that sort of pep in your step. It reminds me of a conversation I was having with one of my good friends, Orville. We were having a nice picnic one day. I believe it was summer. Or perhaps it was fall. Yes, it was fall. Now remember, because the leaves had turned already. But I said, Orville, I said to him, well, I have a story to tell you. And Orville looked at me, kind of odd, and said, what is it about? I said to him, not every story has to be about something, Wobble. Sometimes a person just wants to talk. Why does everything gotta be a story? I said to him. He just kind of looked at me, dumbfounded like, and said, well, you said you had a story. You know, he was quite right. I did, in fact. I told him I had a story. I suppose if a person just wants to talk, then it's best not to announce that you're telling a story. Telling a story does come with its own pressures and expectations, I suppose. After all, if you're just talking to a friend, then there's no more expectations than if you're talking into the wind. Birds by themselves aren't expected to carry, they're unexpected to stick, but if you announce that you're telling a story, well, then there better be a point to it. No one wants to just sit and listen to somebody ramble on and on and on with absolutely no end in sight. So, it's good to be mindful when you tell somebody you're about to tell a story that you have something to say. Telling somebody that you're gonna tell them a story is tantamount to ask them to stop what they're doing and pay attention. You're basically saying, hey, buddy, stop everything, stop what you're thinking, stop what you're doing. I have a solution to everything. And, well, I really didn't have any story to tell. In hindsight, probably just misspoke when I said I had a story. I think it would have been better to tell Wolfle than I wanted to tell him something, rather than tell him I had a story. But, even then, that might not put enough unimportance on the whole thing. Either way, it was quite a nice day. I remember we were drinking nice iced tea. Oh my god. As I do this, I'm getting like exponentially more southern. Like it started here, kind of, hippo. How I would expect a hippo to talk if a hippo could speak English. And then it's just like, ooh, hitting some grandpa bumps. Okay, well, it's getting a little bit southern, but it's okay. He's Mr. Hippo. His character is, regular to being a little bit southern. I was born in Alabama. God, was that too loud? I'm sorry. Um. Anyway, should we do another one? Yeah, let's do one more. How long is this one? This one's 2 minutes. How long was the other one? Oh my god, that was 3 minutes. Oh, sweet baby. Well, seems that your journey has ended. Very sorry about that. It was so it's going to end this way, I suppose. But if it weren't for me, it would have just been about some other, terrible thing. Just you could not imagine how terrible it would be. Just get scared thinking about it. Glad it's not me. Reminds me of a time I was speaking to my friend Orville. We were sitting on the park bench watching pigeons. I was on his left. He was on the wait. Was I on the right or the left? Anyways, doesn't matter. We were sitting there watching the pigeons, and I said to Orville, I said to him, see, friend, those birds are frozen. And he kind of looked at me like I'd gone cuckoo crazy. And but I reminded him that it was winter, and often birds will sit in a tree until they freeze. Then they sort of fall to the ground till the sun, of course, warms them up again, and then they can move around again. So I said to Waffle, I said to him, you might as well save those breadcrumbs until the birds thaw, because they can't very well enjoy them in the condition that they're in. To which he asked what I meant, in asking what condition the crumbs should be in before he threw them to the birds, assuming, of course, that I meant the birds couldn't enjoy the breadcrumbs in the condition that the breadcrumbs were in, when, of course, in fact, I had meant the birds could not enjoy them in the condition that birds were in, considering that the birds were, frozen. So he took a moment, and then he threw his last handful on the ground. I looked him in the eyes, and I said to him, Orville, why'd you throw your breadcrumbs onto the birds when I just told you they're frozen? To which he responded, breadcrumbs are not frozen. Again, misunderstanding my words. I didn't mean to say that the breadcrumbs were frozen, per se. When I said I had told you the frozen, I had been referring to the birds. In hindsight, what I should have said was, and this would make perfect sense, why did you throw the breadcrumbs to the birds when the birds are frozen? He misunderstood upon my correction, stating that he didn't know what else to do with the breadcrumbs, and that perhaps, when the birds thawed, they'd still be able to eat the crumbs. So I said to Wolf, I said to him, this is what I said to him. I said, Wolf, the birds may be dead. Well, that's the end of my story. Time to pack it up, guys. Go home. This was fun, I guess, in a way. I'd be happy to do it again. So tell me what you guys thought, and how many times my audio peaked whenever I pronounced the letter S. Yeah, okay, sure. Bye.